Hey everyone, so excited for another fireside chat. I'm really excited about our special guest today. As you know, I'm Nate Meadows, head of marketing over at Pine. In a second, I'm going to bring Akash on, who's our CEO, and give you a quick update as to what's new with Pine. I'm sure you've seen a lot of new things over the last couple weeks, and we're excited to chat with you. And also, the cool folks from Better Careers. We got Yuji and Maddie. We're going to kick off this discussion around hiring solutions engineers. So, without further delay, let's welcome Akash to the stage. What's up, Akash?
Hey Nate, how are you?
Doing
Long
good,
time no
man.
see. Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
yeah, I haven't seen you in like, I don't know, maybe in the, it's been
Mhm.
a minute, so 5 minutes actually.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. But welcome to everyone who's here. Really excited to have you here for this. We're really excited to be partnering with Better Career, Yuji and Maddie over there about the future of hiring solutions engineers. My name is Akash Ganapathy. I'm the CEO of Opine. Opine is basically like your AI sales engineering assistant. We focus on correlating all of that data about the customer from all the disparate tool sets where they live, in your customer transcripts, in your Slack chats, in your Teams chats, in the CRM, obviously, in Jira and linear tickets and Notion and Google Drive. We correlate all that information into one place where you can ask questions about, what were our customer requirements? What were the actual risks in this deal? What are the blockers of this deal? We also like build living account plans for you and then track those risks automatically so that SEs aren't doing this like glorified project management role, but they're actually being consultative and selling in like that technical trust building fashion. So that's what Opine does. And happy to kind of introduce and kick it back to Nate, the two people that everyone's actually here to see. No, I'm just kidding. Yuji and Maddie over at Better Career.
Wait a second, they're not here to talk, see this guy, see this face?
No, it's not you, Nate.
Oh, well,
I'm
all right,
sorry.
that's fine.
It is me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, okay,
No,
that's
it's really
fine.
though. Yeah.
All right, it's the group, I love it. Yeah, before I do, leave a comment in the chat. Tell us where you're coming in and viewing us from. Definitely, drop questions. I'll make sure to kind of surface them when and where I can. But without further delay, let's bring up Yuji and Maddie. Hey,
Hello.
Hey guys, good to be here.
it is great to be here. Yuji, you want to kick us off? Tell us a little about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about Better Career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having us. It's always great to partner with you guys at Opine, Nate and Akash. But yeah, my name's Yuji Agashi. I'm a co-founder of Better Career. I've spent most of my career in pre-sales. I used to lead a global pre-sales team of sales engineers, and then I also co-founded Pre-Sales Collective. Now I co-lead Better Career along with Maddie, and we do career coaching, specifically around job search. Maddie will talk a little bit more about that, but we also do recruiting. So we help SC leaders and sales leaders find really good top talent for both sales engineering roles and sales and account executive roles. So that's a little about me. I'll pass to Maddie to intro herself.
Yeah, thanks, Yuji. Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie Stremick. I'm currently based out of Oahu, Hawaii. So I got to go scuba diving for the first time in my life on Sunday, which was amazing. So if we have any divers that are joining us, please send me a message. Would love your tips. On the professional side, my background is really in human development, HR, and sales enablement. So I actually got hired on by Yuji at the Pre-Sales Collective to help lead the academy and enablement programs for ICs. So now here at Better Career, we are really focusing on helping anyone from career changers all the way to SE leaders in finding their next opportunity. So we work directly with employers and then as well as top talent to help them find their next role in a really crazy competitive job market. So like Yuji mentioned, we also do the recruiting side. So we operate on both sides of the fence, which puts us in kind of a unique position to have a cool perspective and behind the scenes look at how both managers are seeing like what they're struggling with when it comes to hiring, as well as what candidates are experiencing in the day-to-day. So we've seen this process for hundreds of companies, and hopefully we'll be able to provide a really fun and insightful perspective today. So excited to share that with you.
Awesome. I love it. I see a couple of people joining us from Seattle, Washington, which is one of my favorite places. So jealous that they're there. Also, Maddie, it's also very jealous that you're in Hawaii. So I think you have all of us beat, candidly.
Yeah, I have to wake up extra early. So my day starts around like 3 a.m., but I have no complaints whatsoever.
I would do a 3 a.m. for to be on location in Hawaii for sure.
It's worth it.
Awesome. All right, so let's kick this off. We're just kind of a free-flowing conversation. Obviously, we're talking about the future of hiring solutions engineers. Eugene, I'm going to kick it to you first. Why has the demand outpaced supply for SEs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just generally, over the last decade, probably there's been a lot of increase in hiring in the SE role. And am I still in this chat? Oh no, sorry. Yeah, I pulled the wrong screen. Sorry, went blank for a second. But yeah, no, I think over the last decade, hiring for SEs has really increased, and the demand for that role, that very specialized role, has increased substantially. I'd say that now it's a bit of a different market than what a lot of us have experienced in the past, where it was very imbalanced across all of tech. There were way more SC vacancies than there were available talent on the market. I know when I was hiring SCs, I would always have 6 open spots on my team that I could not ever fill, and it was always very challenging. I think now, and especially in the last few years, as the market has shifted, it's more of a balanced market generally across the board, but it's a weird market in the sense that there are pockets of companies that continue to lay off. In fact, unfortunately, I had a hiring manager reach out to me today saying he just had to let go one of his SCs through a big layoff that they did. So, and that sucks, and that we don't want to see that happen, but it is happening in some pockets of tech. And these are usually going to be, more legacy SaaS companies or late stage SaaS companies that are still trying to figure out how to right size. And so, in those areas, there's more talent than actually open spots. Where on the other side, if you're looking at AI companies, well-funded Series A, Series B, early stage companies, that's where it's flipped, actually, right? There's a lot more SC vacancies than there are talent. And you would think that a lot of these people that might be getting laid off or they're in the market could go into those roles. And that's a case that is the case in a lot of cases. But in a lot of cases, the skill sets and the talent and the profiles don't necessarily line up as well as we would hope. So what I would say that generally the hiring for sales engineers and demand for sales engineers continues to grow. But we're in this really strange market where it's a bit imbalanced, is from what we're seeing just across all the companies that we've worked with and all the different SCs we worked with over the years. So yeah, it's been interesting. But we'll talk a little bit more about the actual profiles and skills and things like that companies are looking for later in discussion, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's actually a great segue to my next question. But before I do, I don't know if Akash, you can interrupt and go for it.
Actually, I had a question, which is so Yuji, do you think it is primarily a reskilling issue that's kind of causing the two-sided imbalance, large companies shedding a bit, but small companies unable to find the right profile? Is it primarily a reskilling issue of existing talent, or is there also maybe a broader challenge about just pre-sales roles not being well understood earlier in people's careers and things like that as well? Or both?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's definitely a reskilling challenge, and I think that exists across almost all roles that are out there, right? As we get more comfortable or learn more of what the impact of AI will be on different jobs, and there's some companies that laid off a bunch of people thinking AI would do all the work and make their workforce more efficient, but then they quickly realized that wasn't the case, right? So they had to hire a bunch of people back. So we've seen that happen. So I think there is some reskilling as a part of it. I think there's also hiring managers and organizations are just trying to figure out what is that profile that they really need going forward. And I think what we're challenged with is that the technical landscape is evolving so quickly that it's really hard to know what kind of skill set or what kind of profile you're going to need now versus what you might need 6 months down the road or 18 months down the road. So I think that's part of it too. In talking to a lot of hiring managers, people are just trying to figure out what do they actually need, whether it's number of headcount or a certain profile or skill set. So I think it's a little bit of both. And there's probably some other variables that I've even come across, but that's the way I think about it based on what we see.
Nice. Maddie, that's kind of where I want your take. What are the biggest skill gaps you're seeing in the pre-sales candidates?
Yeah, no, it's definitely been interesting. So we've gotten, an influx of individuals that are job seeking. One of the first things that they share with us is all these job descriptions are listing technical requirements that I don't have whatsoever. They want me to be able to code. They want me to know things about AI that, are developing every week. And so from the candidate's perspective, a lot of times SEs feel like these roles are highly, much more technical than what they've been historically. It also happens to be that there's a lot of generalist SEs that are in the job market right now. And so what we're finding is that technical skills oftentimes are a barrier on the front end of the equation. So people are not getting interviews because of a lack of technical skills. But once they're in the interview process, it's the soft skills that are ultimately ruling them out. So it's definitely like not having technical skills can prevent you from maybe getting an interview if you're going through like cold applications. But ultimately, like soft skills are still king, and that even folks that have really great technical backgrounds, they get ruled out. Lack of storytelling, lack of, like strong communication and executive presence in these presentations. And ultimately, like as SCs, you have to be able to break down technical topics. And so if that area is missing, then the technical skills can only take you so far. So those are things that we've seen on that end.
Yeah. So basically what I heard is I would not be a good SE. I do not have that technical background, but hey, I got the soft skills. I mean, I like to think so. Awesome.
It depends on the SE role, it definitely varies as far as how technical you need to be. But I do think being very resourceful and the AI fluency is huge. We know in pretty much any type of, hiring process, hiring managers are asking about that. How are you using AI? How have you used it in your team? What does that look like? Give us specific examples. So that is something that just has to be top of mind, I think, for candidates, is increasing their skills and also AI fluency.
Awesome. Oh, I was actually going to ask, because you brought up a great point, which is like everyone wants an AI fluent like candidate in almost every role, it feels like now. Like how are you using tools to modify your job and be better than before? How are you kind of advising people to do that, given that no one really has more than 2 or 3 years of like leveraging AI tooling on the job, like for a general SE role, let's say, right? Unless you were literally in the AI space before that. Yeah. So like, how do you kind of coach someone to become that person, especially when the bar at like a lot of these growth stage companies is like getting higher and higher for that? And then do you feel like it's easier for like a more technical, like a software engineer to kind of get those sales skills, or is it easier the other way around for like a general SE that's learned the soft skills through their career to kind of get AI wise, if that makes sense? Yeah. Maybe that last question doesn't have a single answer, but yeah.
Maybe I'll answer the first one and give the second one to Yuji. But just as far as the AI fluency, so what's really important here is that you can give specific examples. That's a lot of times where folks go wrong, is they just speak generally about something of like, oh, how I would use this, or generally I approach using AI like this. But you need specific examples to have a really compelling answer. And so if you didn't actually use AI a ton or didn't get a ton of exposure, and then say you were laid off and you've been job searching for a while, now you're in a weird position of like, well, how do I talk about using AI in my role when I didn't use it that much, or I've been job searching for so long. And so one of the ways that we coach it, first of all, is using AI throughout your entire job search. And so that's key, from like practicing interviews to like first drafts, and being able to like give specific examples there. And then also sometimes that looks like building a project and doing additional certifications. But what's important is that you give a specific example. So if you do have, previous experience where you leveraged AI on a team, you want to speak to projects that you implemented using AI and ultimately what was like the result of that. So how much time did it save the team? What was the impact? How did it, influence revenue directly or indirectly? And giving a specific story around that. And that's usually compelling enough.
Nice. Also, I kind of felt like, there's like memes about this, right? How do you get 5 years of AI experience when it's only been like around or relevant for like 2 or 3, to Akash's point? So.
Yeah. And I'm, Yuji, you're gonna have to help me out. Zach from OpenAI, remind me of his last name. I'm probably gonna mispronounce it anyway.
Larrick.
Well,
Zach Larrick. Yeah.
He's their SE leader. And, he was talking on a podcast not too long ago about how like this is the one time where technology literally changes like every single week. And so staying on top of it becomes kind of very overwhelming. But just really interesting as far as like it's evolving every week. And so it's a little bit different than what we've seen historically when it comes to like how technology is evolving and what it means to stay on top of it as an SE.
Nice. Usually, how's technology changed hiring SEs?
Yeah, it's certainly evolved, right? It continues to evolve. I think like Maddie mentioned, and like we talked about already, like the tech skills are still very, very in focus. I think They've always been that way for sales engineering roles, and they will continue to be a big area of focus for hiring. And so what we're seeing a lot of now, though, is proof of skills, right? It used to be, again, back when I was hiring for SEs, you could come in with 5 years of experience. We'd have a few interview conversations and you'd get the job. Now in the hiring process for SEs, there's a lot more proof of skills, meaning like doing demo presentations, doing technical exercises where you're given some sort of exercise you have to take home and work on to provide some sort of report on. OpenAI does this, right, as an example as part of their hiring process. So that's one thing. Certainly testing for, like we just talked about, AI fluency, understanding of AI. We see the question get asked all the time, like, how are you using AI in your day-to-day today? Or, what things what parts of your workflow have you automated automated with AI or introduced AI to make you more efficient or effective. So that's a big part of the hiring process as well. I would say that the other thing that is worth calling out here too is that, a lot of SE leaders out there are still big champions of hiring people that don't have previous experience as a sales engineer and people from non-traditional backgrounds. And that's great. So that hiring still exists. I will say that in this market, from what we've seen, it has been more challenging, and we have seen hiring managers not have to necessarily look past the pool of experienced SCs that they have available to them, and then taking a risk on somebody that doesn't necessarily have the experience. So, it still exists. If you haven't been an SC before, which I'm sure a lot of folks are on the call today, there's absolutely opportunity out there for you. The key, though, is to show proof of your skills proactively. And that's a big part of our approach when coaching first-time SCs especially, but even experienced SCs, is actually having them show hiring teams and hiring managers that they have the skills and the ability to do the job proactively before they get asked.
Let me ask you real quick. Let me interrupt real quick and just ask, like, what would be your advice on how to actually show that?
One example of what we do or have, especially first-time SEs, people going after their first SE role. One example of what we have them do is do a micro demo. Because one of the big things that we talked about is like having soft skills, being able to deliver and storytell and deliver a strong presentation. And so a lot of interview processes for SEs will have that as a step, usually late in the process. But as a first-time SE, you're probably never going to get there because on paper, you don't have the skills or experience to get past the recruiter even a lot of times. And so we have those folks do is create a micro demo that shows them doing a really effective demo with storytelling and that's value focused and that's delivered in a strong way, and then use that to share with the hiring team and a hiring manager. And that gets them the foot in the door to then get in the interview process and start having conversations. And that's frankly how we've helped a lot of people with a lot less experience that were very unqualified get into higher roles or even their first sales engineering role ever. So that's something that we use. That's one example. There's a lot of other things that we do as well to help, again, show proof of skill, but that's one of the core ones.
Awesome. We got a great question that came in from the chat. Akash, I'm gonna turn this over to you. Let you answer this one first.
Yeah, because I noticed that question. I liked it too. I'm glad you pulled it up. I'll ask it real quick. I like to be mindful of how much work I demand of candidates in the process. So there's demos, take-home technical projects, case studies, etc. How do I balance the testing of their aptitude, right? Whether that's, let's just assume, like some kind of demo, like false demo or like a coding interview even, versus what they're just saying. You know what I mean? And so, I'm curious what you would say to that, Yuji, or Maddie for that matter. Yeah. And so to reframe the question slightly, I was also thinking like, basically, how does a hiring manager, what are they doing right? Are the ones that are putting a lot of practical skills to the forefront, are they actually hiring correctly in your opinion? Are they getting better candidates in the end? Or do you actually feel like maybe there aren't great candidates that are being kind of overlooked because hiring managers are looking at the wrong things? And what is the right way to hire? Let's put it that way, right? To like strike the balance. Yeah.
Good question. What's the right way to hire like that? Yeah.
One thing I'll call out is sometimes if your process is, if you've got like 7 steps and, 2 projects, you might actually lose out on top talent that is already in a role but doesn't want to go through that process necessarily. So you do risk losing out on talent that feels like they should be paid for their efforts. And I do think when it comes to creating a balance, part of it is about prioritization. So what is most important to you? And then also, what does it look like to do that presentation or final project? And trying to do it to where it's your top like 3 to 5 choices with no more than that. So we've seen teams take, like 10 people to a presentation round, and now you've got like a sales leader or an AE and an SE all on this panel, taking up hours and hours of your time. And so I would recommend like doing the presentation and project round towards the end, and then only taking your top like 3 to 5 candidates.
Nice. That's pretty clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add to that's, I mean, great point. I'll just add to that, when we talk to hiring managers, because we've seen a lot of hiring processes for sales engineers, like hundreds at this point. We have, kind of a database where at some point we'll put out a report on this, but I will say first thing, it really depends on your role and what's important to you. So the first thing I always ask hiring managers is like, what is the most important thing that you need from a candidate that you can't teach them quickly, or that you feel like they can't learn maybe quickly? And let's assess that and evaluate that thing, right? So if it's delivery and presentation, let's do a demo, right? If it's some sort of technical skill, then let's do a technical exercise, right? Or maybe it's just you want to see if they have the drive and the aptitude to learn something quickly. So let's test them on that. And then that's the one thing we'll test them on, and then we'll teach the rest of them, or teach the rest of what they need, whether it's skills or domain experience on the role, or once they're in the role. So that's usually how I look at it, is let's not try to test every single thing through the interview process. Let's test that one thing, that core thing that we feel like we really need them to come in the door with, and the rest we can teach.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go for it, Maddie.
I was just going to say too, sometimes you've got companies that they ask someone to do a 15-minute presentation on any software of their choice. And other times you have companies that have a 45-minute presentation on their company and then follow up with a POC presentation. And so one consideration too is with that final presentation or project, how expansive do you actually need it to be to get enough kind of data points on who that person is and how they're showing up in a call? So sometimes it looks like evaluating too, like how expansive is that call, and could you maybe get away with a 15 or 30-minute demo versus maybe a 45-minute? And could you give them the option to choose a software that they already know versus requiring them to do yours? Some companies, give you the option. Some companies make you do one or the other, and it can be hard for candidates to, learn a completely new software when you only give them a week to prep for it.
Interesting. Great. That really answered my questions. It feels like some of it is like hiring best practices in general, where it's like you want to really understand the role that they're coming into, and like what's going to be required of them, and like have hard, like quick pass filters early. And then part of it is like consideration to the candidate and your own internal time, like making sure you really get down to that filter before you ask for that final bar. But setting bars high sounds like it is the right move for hiring managers in general, as well. So.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask this one. I want everyone to answer this question, and we'll start with Akash. What advice would you give to someone trying to break into pre-sales today?
Okay. I'll give my take on it, I guess. So this is more from. So I was a pre-sales leader for a while,
Right.
and I was also an SA before that, and so I have like a very narrow perspective, but my perspective is still worth something, I guess. I'm like, you really should direct it to them because they probably have it.
I'm just curious. I want to put you on the spot.
I'm curious. I want to hear Akash.
Yeah, exactly. I figured we're basically testing you here, Akash, right now.
No, it's fine. I'll just talk about how I broke into pre-sales because I think no one really starts as just an SE. I think that's very, very new. There are some people that are like going from university, like a BS in computer science, and they're like going straight into being an SE. It's extremely like unheard of, like 5-10 years ago or longer, right? Like definitely not longer, right? It was always a very much someone from software, someone from marketing, someone from sales that's like turns into the SE over time, because they realize they can bridge the gap between the tech and the business side, right? And someone from product, for example. So I came from software, like pure software. So I was a software engineer. And I basically just realized like I was an extrovert at heart, and like I liked talking to people, I liked solving problems. that were not just technical, like algorithmic, like code level problems. And so that's kind of what drew me into the space. And like when I realized that I could do work that was closer to that, and there was a special role for it, I was like, yeah, I mean, let me just go do that then. But I would say like I didn't know like until about 8 years into my career that was even a thing. So for what it's worth. So and that's probably early given compared to other folks that have like broken in, so to speak, to pre-sales. So in general, for anyone trying to like break in, I'd just say like you're not alone. Like there's still a ton of people trying to break in. And just the fact that you even know pre-sales exists is probably a good thing, because there's people that are going to become SEs today that like in the future that don't even know that SEs are a role today. There's still a lot of people like that. So I guess that my top advice would be like really understand like a specific industry that you want to go be an SE in. I think it's very hard to kind of just be like, I want to be an SE anywhere, and then start applying to cybersecurity companies and SaaS companies and AI companies and like, all kinds of other like types of SEs that are out there, obviously health tech and fintech and so on. And if it's much simpler to be like, hey, I kind of have a lane that I want to go be an SE in, because you have to become an industry expert. You have to become a technology expert somewhere to be like a phenomenal SE. So, trying to like play all like kinds of like play all the kinds of industries in a more general way. That'd be probably my top take, is like pick a place that you really like and try and go all in and really learn that tech and that industry and how it's sold and so on.
Love that.
Awesome. Guys, how was his answer? We'll put him on the spot. Yeah,
Nailed
good.
it.
All right. Nailed it. All right.
Oh gosh.
Eugene,
Thanks,
what do you
Nate.
think? Yeah, hey, you're welcome. This is what I'm here for.
That's what you're here for. Nah,
This is the
that's
only
fine.
value I add to this conversation.
man.
Eugene, I'm curious. I'll turn it over to you next. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure Manny has a lot to say here too. So I'll just keep it super simple. But I think in my mind, it's three things. And one is maybe the obvious one, is learn as much as you can about the SE role. There's books, there's podcasts, there's Pre-Sales Collective, there's technical skills that you can learn. That's the obvious one. The second one though is network. You have to put a lot of energy into networking and meeting people within the pre-sales world, because that's ultimately going to be how you get a role. And you need those doors to open for you. And you do that through networking. And networking is not that hard, relatively, I think, in the pre-sales world, because pre-sales folks are very willing to help. And we're just by nature, I think, very helpful and want to meet and support people in their careers. So if you reach out to people, you will have conversations, and those are very important, because again, those will lead to opportunities for you. So that's the second one. And the third one is just don't give up, right? We've had people on 2-year journeys sometimes where they really, really want to break into SE roles, and they stick with it, and ultimately get into that role. And in no case has anybody said that they regret putting that work in and going on that long journey, because they really, really love this pre-sales role, the earning potential it has, the growth potential, the variety of work, all the benefits that the role has. So that'd be the last thing, is just don't give up. If you're 9 months into your journey, a year plus into your journey, just stick with it, keep learning, keep networking, and eventually you'll get there.
Awesome. Good advice. All right,
Yeah.
Mandy, you're up.
Yeah. So love the inspiration, Yuji. Fun fact for everyone here. My brother actually was a former teacher, and he just worked very hard to get into an SE role. And now he's about 3 months in and officially giving demos. So he went from literally being a teacher to high schoolers to now working at a tech company and working remote. So it definitely can be just absolutely life-changing. I think one thing that's, really important is your ability to actually do a gap analysis of where you are and then where you need to go. And where we see folks, can sometimes go or miss the mark is actually not fully understanding the role. So if you don't truly understand the role, then you can't adequately compare what you've done historically and where you need to go. And part of that is really figuring out, okay, what are the skills that you're missing based off of the type of SE role that you want to end up in? And also, like, what is your background? What can you use to actually leverage within your job search? So being able to do a gap analysis allows you to be a lot more strategic. What you don't want to do is, Akash, you mentioned, like, not just like shooting for any company. You want to be very, very narrow and very specific with your job search, so you can kind of stay in your lane And that also leads into, networking. So you don't want to just network with anyone and everyone. I mean, you absolutely can. That's nice to do, but you also want to be very pointed in who you're networking with, people that can actually help you. So we treat people to run their job search like a sales process and use a lot of like common, really like AE or SE, tactics that are used within the sales process in their job search. And a part of that is you need to secure a champion. So Eugene mentioned like that's ultimately how you get a role is through networking. And so it's not just about meeting people, but it's building relationships over time, planting seeds, and then learning how to like build a champion in someone and sort of enable them to help them advocate for you internally and help get your foot in the door. So you want to kind of do that gap analysis so you can create a plan and then really double down on networking. That is ultimately, how you're going to get there.
I love that.
That's such a great.
Yeah,
sorry, Nate. You go ahead.
Go for it.
I was going to say I really like that gap analysis like term, right? I think that's so valuable, not just for finding like a SE role, but just in general in life. If you like are trying to get somewhere, right? Do you really understand the gap? That's pretty awesome advice. Yeah. That's all I was gonna say.
Cool. I was gonna say, I'm gonna be real honest here. If Chipotle needed SEs, that's what the industry I'd be focusing in on, no doubt. We actually got a great question in the chat from Allie, which is, how would you recommend individuals use AI during their job search? Maddie, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to kick that one off.
Yeah, I will. So there's a lot of different ways. Of course, learning how to like prompt effectively is so important because you can go and, use people's, get different prompts, get suggestions, but being able to effectively prompt, using like ChatGPT or Gemini is so important because that is going to increase the value that you get out of these resources. So I would say start using, like ChatGPT as not only as like first draft, but also a sounding board. One of my favorite ways to actually use either ChatGPT or to use other like AI is through practice interviewing. So as just a quick example, I actually used OpenAI's voice mode to have a dialogue and to prep for this conversation today. And so what that looked like is I gave it context. I shared, like these are the areas that I'm going to be focusing on. And I asked it to prompt and give me a bunch of different questions. And then it gave me feedback. And so this requires me to talk out loud and actually get that verbal practice and help me practice different questions that I didn't see coming. So we also use a tool called Udely AI, which is really incredible to practice interviews. But that role play aspect of AI is truly a difference maker because it allows you to get repetitions that force you to speak out loud. So it increases your confidence and just helps you like develop better answers.
Love that. Anyone else want to add to that?
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Please, Eugene.
No, go ahead.
I don't know.
Oh yeah. I was going to just add to Ali's point about trying to find roles that are the best fit for your experience or expertise. I mean, certainly you could just throw your resume and your LinkedIn profile in along with some example companies that you're interested in, and it will give you a big list, of course, of the types of companies that could be a good fit for you. I would also suggest using this tool this website called JobRite. We use it sometimes. And it does a really good job of taking your resume and your profile and then surfacing different types of jobs that are listed across a lot of different boards, including LinkedIn, Indeed, and others, and then rating the percentage of match to your profile. So you can take a look at that as an option too. Nice. So it's kind of a AI wrapper that they've created that does that job matching for you. Nice. It's called jobrite.co, I think.
Nice.
Thanks, Eugene, for jumping in there. I interpreted that as how to use AI in your job search in general. So thank you for adding that.
No, good. Like, one thing that I would add to that, you were talking about like uploading your resume, uploading pasting in your LinkedIn URL, and a couple, some of the companies, but also like to Maddie's earlier point, I would add in that gap analysis as well to kind of see maybe where some of that shortcomings are, where those gaps are, et cetera, and how to close them.
Look at you, more than a Chipotle fanboy.
Listen, I'm not just another pretty face. Every now and then I absorb something. So hanging around you guys really has really leveled me up. So so one of the things I wanted to say, like Austin said this in the chat, like I love the securing a champion analogy, but like I think this is actually a good way to kind of like a little rabbit hole to go down. what are some of the best ways to secure a champion and go about that? And also maybe things to avoid, look out for when trying to find that champion.
Yeah.
Eugene, you want to kick us off? Or Manny? Yeah, go for it.
So I'll just jump in to kind of kickstart and then get to UG. But one thing I want to call out here is that a lot of times folks either focus on just reaching out to another SE and trying to make that SE a champion, or they focus on just reaching out to maybe pre-sales leadership and trying to make that person their champion. And the reality is you want to take both strategies. You want to go bottom up and you want to go top down. So what that often means is folks are too scared to actually reach out to like managers and leaders directly, but oftentimes those can actually be the best advocates, even if it's for another team. And we've had a lot of different, pre-sales leaders ultimately mentor someone over the course of a year and then ended up hiring them after that. And so just as far as like the type of champion, think about who can actually help get your foot in the door. And that's not just another SE. It could be, but look at also like AEs as well as like pre-sales leadership.
It's really interesting to me how much this mirrors like a sales process. You know what I mean? Like sourcing an opportunity, like outbound sales process. Which obviously it's like if you had those muscles at all in your bones as an SE, then like your value kind of like really goes up on the soft skill side, right? Just if you are capable of networking, if you are capable of building relationships, because it is more than just presenting technology on the job, right? It's like much more about developing a technical relationship with the technical users on the other side and like building that trust with the buyer around, this being the right choice, not just from a tech perspective, but also from a vendor perspective, right? Like as an SE, that's like what we really drive in the sales cycle. So the fact that like you'd be able to do this and demonstrate it during the job process, I feel like is almost why it would resonate with a hiring manager, right? It's like, oh, look at this sales person that's like reaching out and like building a relationship, and they can see the meta, but they would respect it, I feel like, which is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're showing like a proof of skill or proof of sales acumen and ability when you're doing that. And so, and this is a must, by the way, for our account executive or our sales rep clients we work with. Like you have to do it this way. And if you're a sales engineer and you do it this way too, it definitely shows exactly what you're talking about, is the understanding of how to build relationships and sell and multi-thread and all that fun stuff that we talk about in sales. So absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. We have some good questions coming in the chat. I'm going to pivot and bring one of them up to the stage here. So let's see who wants to tackle this one. I'm going to pick on Maddie again for a second because she's in Hawaii and I'm jealous that she's there. So she gets to take this one on.
Okay, wait, let me read it real quick. Ooh, okay. What questions would you ask them to assess their management style? So one thing that we see a lot with, SE leader processes is that like final kind of like presentation. It includes like the 30, 60, 90, as well as kind of, usually topics around like their leadership style. So like what initiatives have you done historically? And also how would you describe your leadership style today? And kind of what examples do you have of that? And so what we've seen to be very effective is really prompting SE leaders to give specific examples. So when they say, hey, I want to develop this type of initiative or have this type of outcome at your organization, really prompting and requiring them to give examples of when they've done that successfully in the past, or they've done something very similar. So a lot of times people come in with really big ideas, but then they're not actually including like details as far as the execution of how they would actually do that and how they've done that in the past successfully. So we've seen that a lot in the actually presentation stage. Just be successful and getting leaders to kind of give those examples. I think UG too would also, he does most of our SE leader coaching, would share more.
To slightly tweak. Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
To slightly tweak the question, just because I think I might have might have understood the question a little differently. I think part of the question is also like if you're an SE and like you have, let's say you have multiple options, like you actually are fortunate enough to get multiple job offers, or you're trying to like pick the place for you. How do you assess like a good person to work for too?
I love that one.
Wait, how do you assess a good candidate, like a SE
A good manager to work for, right?
Oh, good
Yes,
manager
as you come in
for
as
the other
yeah,
side of
yeah,
that. Yeah.
for the other side. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would think I'll answer both really quickly. So the first is, for if you're evaluating an SE leader, and certainly the SE leaders that we coach when they're interviewing, the big focus is on stories. So kind of like what Maddie mentioned, specific examples, but also being able to tell stories really well and have really good stories ready to go that are structured, and talk through examples of when you've had to, not the easy stuff, right, but the hard stuff where you've had to lead your team through a really hard change. Maybe it was a layoff or a merger or some sort of transition that was really hard and hard on a lot of people on your team. How did you lead them through that? And then if I was interviewing that person, I would also try to ask a lot of follow-up questions to dig deep into why they made the decision that they made and how they communicated those decisions and so on and so forth. So having stories is like the number one thing we coach our SC leader clients on. And so on the other side of that is, how do you, if you're an SC interviewing for a role, how do you evaluate that leader? And so questions you can ask would be like, I'd love to hear an example of the last time you promoted somebody. How did that look like, right? Or give me an example of the last time you had to help somebody who maybe was not performing at the level that you expected. How did you work with them through that challenge, right? And I think how what they share in those examples will be very insightful as far as how they manage, because those are, the promotion is great. You want somebody that's going to be an advocate for you and get you promoted and move you up in the organization, or at least give you more responsibility to take on more and challenge yourself. But of course, on the other side of things, if things aren't going as expected, are they going to be there to support you and coach you up and get you to where you need to be? Or, are they going to just let you go and move on, right? Which of course is not what we want to have happen. So those are some examples. There's a lot of other questions that you should definitely ask your leader before you sign on to work with them. But those are some quick ones.
Awesome.
Nice.
Another great question to ask, Yuji, I don't think you mentioned this one, but it's one of the ones that we recommend, is asking, like, how do you gather feedback from your team, and what's the last initiative that you implemented as a result of the feedback that you got from your team? If they can't give one example, that's a huge red flag. I would also say the last thing too, pay attention to how they treat you throughout the process. Are they actually leaving time for you to ask questions and being cognizant of like what's important to you as well? So those are other things to kind of like think through too, is like, how are you being treated, and do they care about what you care about? Are they actually invest in the conversation or not?
Love that. All right. So listen, we got about maybe 5 or so minutes left in our fireside chat, and I want to just ask a few more questions here. We'll maybe go a little rapid fire round. But Maddie, I want to hear from you. What should organizations be doing to, like, I would say, build and prepare for the next generation of SE leaders? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is so crucial and often, not implemented or not implemented well is like mentorship programs. So building out actually formal mentorship or sometimes informal mentorship programs is a huge way to actually retain your talent, your top talent, and also create like good cross collaboration. And then also to help individuals get more guidance. Because a lot of times, managers are so busy that individuals are actually not getting a lot of coaching. So we have a lot of individual contributors that come to us. They've been in the role for 3 to 7 years, and they want to leave, not just because of compensation, but often just because they've hit the ceiling within their organization. And these are individuals that are like often like influencing a lot of revenue, doing really well, but now they have nowhere to go. And so providing different opportunities for people to grow, whether that's through a mentorship program, both in helping others as well as getting access to other people and resources for themselves. So I'm a huge advocate for mentorship programs, a lot of great data behind it too, for just helping retain talent and allowing people to like grow and move towards a leadership role.
Love that. Awesome. Yuji, I'm putting you on the spot here. If we don't solve the SC hiring gap, what's the risk for sales organizations over the next coming years?
Yeah, that's a good question. As somebody who has led SC teams, and like I mentioned earlier, have had a lot of vacancies on my team, I know how expensive it can be for the organization and the sales team to have vacancies on your SC team. And so that's certainly one of the risks, right? I think not having a fully staffed SE team can lead to also burnout for your existing SEs that are having to carry more weight than maybe they should. And eventually that can hurt morale, and you lose your best people if they're burnt out. So that's something that is certainly at risk. I think there's been a lot of organizations too that have tried to operate more lean, and so they increase their SE to AE ratios. But of course, that can be also challenging for SEs too, who are trying to juggle too much more than they can. And then, of course, that can lead to stalled deals, slow pipeline, sales velocity goes down, conversions go down. So I think sales leaders and SE leaders are familiar with all this and understand the cost of an SE vacancy. But I think the challenge certainly has been finding that right profile. And like I mentioned earlier, like that profile keeps evolving. And so I think companies are trying to really figure out what that looks like. So I guess my advice to everybody too would be, think through what you really need again in that profile, and then be open to other profiles or other people from other backgrounds that have different skill sets that could be adjacent or transferable. And then really focus on finding that person that is just hungry to learn and has the aptitude to learn quickly. Because that person, especially also in my experience, when I've hired people that are underqualified for roles, but they show that they have the hunger and the drive and the ability to learn quickly, those folks have often, outpaced and exceeded expectations and outpaced a lot of the experienced people I've hired too. So that'd be that one thing to consider is, help people reskill, help people get into those roles, but find ways to get the right profile, including people that have the ability and the drive to get there.
Love that. That's such a good answer. I got to say, I've been looking forward to our conversation with the both of you for, ever since we started talking about it. And you both are just absolutely wonderful people. I love the work that you're doing over at Better Career. And there's obviously someone in the chat who wants to talk to you guys too, which is great and phenomenal. Let me ask this question. I want all three of you to answer, and I actually will answer the same question as well. This is a first. This is a fireside chat first. I'm answering an SE question. But if you're hiring an SE today, what do you think would be I would say the number one, or maybe the top, few attributes or things and characteristics that you'd be looking out for? Akash, we'll start with you.
For me, I think I'm always going to frame it in the context of the business, right? I think this is probably true across the board. Is SE's roles look very different at different companies, and so it's almost why the exercise that Yuji just mentioned of really understanding what they need to do in your environment to drive revenue velocity and unblock deals and so on. What does that really mean in your sales process is critical for the hiring managers. So for me, for an SE, I'd be looking for someone that is capable of communicating the value of AI products, right? Understands the details of how retrieval is done and how context engineering is done, and so that they can communicate why our product is better than the next product that attempts to do the same thing, right? Really own those differentiators and be able to go deep on them for whoever is the technical owner on the other side. But then I'd also be looking for people that have good sales skills, right? That could actually walk the walk when it comes to building a relationship and using our own tooling to do so, right? At Opine, that is. So I think that'd be the balance I'm trying to strike, and here at least, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Awesome.
Love it.
Yuji, and then Maddie, and then I'll close this out with my answer. So
it's tricky. I mean, every hiring manager will have their specific needs as far as tech skills and domain or business acumen, and then depending on which one they weight heaviest, right, can vary depending on what the role they're looking to fill. But I would say for me, over anything else in my career when I've hired, the things that I look for the most are attitude and aptitude, right? If they can show that they can learn things quickly and they have the attitude of I'm going to figure stuff out and I'm hungry enough to go and learn whatever I need to learn quickly, that to me is the hardest to teach and sometimes can't be taught. And so if I can find somebody that has that, I'm willing to roll my sleeves up and coach them and teach them to where they need to be, because I know their upside potential is very high if I can get them there.
Nice. Good answer. Maddie.
Yeah, I would definitely echo both of what you all have said so far. I think to kind of expand on what Yuji said, just as far as resourcefulness, being able to problem solve and find different avenues for getting the answer. I think that's what makes SCs so valuable, even in the sales process, is their ability to connect the dots. And so I think really having someone that's resourceful, because if you think about it too, there's two types of people. One person that if you don't tell them what to do, they sit on their hands and they wait for you to come around eventually. The other person says, okay, I've identified this problem, and they're bringing it to you, and they're bringing a potential like solution, and they're raising their hand to be a part of solving it. Those are very two different profiles. And so I think that curiosity, resourcefulness is absolutely priceless and something very hard to train. So I think that would be priority for me.
Love that. I've never hired an SE, but we talk a lot about this internally, and one of the things that we've seen through our research in general, and just listening to Akash as well, is I think the ability to read the room and understand the buyer, the emotions of the buyer. How do you create trust and establish? How do you create and establish trust and maintain that throughout the sales cycle, right? Because it's emotional, it's subconscious. The buyer is putting a lot of capital on the line, so to speak, to work with you and go back internally and champion your solution. So I think you're kind of playing a little bit of therapist and psychologist and champion and reading all kinds of sort of different hats. So I would say reading the room, I think, is an important skill set for an SE to have. So
nice. That's a good one.
Awesome. This has been wonderful. We have one more question that came in. I actually want to answer I want to turn this over to the group to see who wants to answer this quickly. But it's a great question. And then after this, I'll close this out.
There's a lot of chatter online about AI replacing not only SEs, but sales roles in general. Have you seen many organizations buying in wholesale to the use of AI to automate demos and do value analysis? It's a great question. I was wondering if we'd get a question like this. I'm curious what everyone's answer is, but I'll kind of jump in a little bit, just given that we're in like the AI and sales tech kind of space, and AI for SE space. So in general, I'd say most SE leaders are not of the opinion that AI can replace an SE, just in general. There are like elements of the job that people are trying to automate. So like, for example, people will call products like AI SEs, but what they really are is like better product enablement for AEs, right? So for the account executives, for the sales reps, can you give them a slightly better user experience to understand the product and knowledge base? And usually that's like a GPT-like chat interface. And that's like an AISE in some sense. It's a very narrow slice of the job from a true SE perspective. Demos is another good example where like there are certain kinds of demos that can be automated, right? It's like not the deep dive workshop style demos where you're really involved with the customers of like objectives and their use cases, and you're like tying it back to your capabilities in a very specific way that's like linked to their business value. But when it's more like the harbor tour demo, or like just, kind of a introductory demo, a discovery demo, like an unqualified demo, where, maybe they can self-serve a little bit if you just gave them all the right pieces of video or product content and so on. It's possible, right? And I think it has less to do with AI really replacing a human, and more so just like technology being used to like deliver content better to the right places, if that makes sense. So to a buyer that's early in the buying cycle, to a sales rep that's like trying to qualify a deal without dragging an SE into the call. And so anyway, so that's my like high level opinion. I do think in general AI is more valuable for augmenting people and like drafting up content and accomplishing tasks that maybe are mundane, right? So like at Opine, for example, drafting like an account plan, creating your meeting preparation before you go into a call, or like analyzing for risks across your pipeline, or like identifying product gaps that should be tracked and logged and things like that. So these types of things can be like drafted, and then an SE can like approve them, right? And again, it's less about doing the job because someone needs to have the like knowledge to understand whether or not this is truly like valid, and have that experience and skill. But it's about augmenting them, right? Can you make an SE like feel superhuman compared to the SE of 10 years ago, and like, or even 5 years ago? And I think that's true, and that's always going to be true with technology. Like there'll always be better and better tooling to like make you feel more and more productive and doing higher value things. But that's just my take. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'll chime in here just briefly. I'll start by saying I am of the opinion that AI eventually will do almost everything humans will do. So, but that's way out there, right? And I read a lot of books on this. Life 3.0 is one that Maddie hears me talk about all the time. It's by Max Tegmark, great book. So I do believe that eventually, but we're so far from that. And I think, to Akash's point, what AI is really going to help us do as SCs is just be a lot better, more efficient, effective in our roles. But the great thing about the SC profile is that you have to, like we talked about ad nauseum here, is you have to have business acumen, you have to be technical, and you have to have the soft skills. And AI is going to have a hard time doing all of those things together well. And at the end of the day, like, businesses are going to continue to buy business software from people, right? That transaction is not going to happen completely without us in the mix, especially complex software, right? Complex software that really transforms businesses. And that's where SCs thrive, right? That's where that profile really, really makes a big impact and adds a lot of value in the deal cycle or in the buying process for businesses. So I think for that reason, we'll continue to be around for a long time as far as SCs go.
So the key point I took away from you, G, was tell ChatGPT thank you and please and be nice to it.
Yeah,
that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I do all the time for sure. You got to.
Do you really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh man, I'm not so nice to my ChatGPT friend, so I need to fix that. I'm gonna go apologize to it after this. Maddie, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree definitely with you. I think over time, things will certainly evolve. I was actually just speaking to an SE leader who they replaced all of their SDRs with AI, and they saw like no difference. So they saw like no dip whatsoever. So just having their AEs and then leveraging AI. So I do think like we're seeing already the involvement of some of these tech sales roles, being impacted heavily by AI. I do think too with SEs, you definitely want to be leveraging AI as much as possible to be more efficient so that you can focus on the more strategic aspects of your role, like the workshopping, the whiteboarding, the problem solving, because I do think like a lot of the demos are going to become like completely self-serve. So I do think if your role is primarily like just demo after demo, you probably want to move away from that and end up in a role where you're doing a little bit more of a combination, or you're doing more of workshopping and being more involved in the sales cycle. So that's something I would say is like, if all you're doing really right now is demoing, I would try to expand beyond that, go into a role that expands beyond that.
Love that. All right, closing us out. Akash, I'm going to give you the stage, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eugene and Maddie. Just to remind the folks, plug them who Opine is, what we do, and why we do it. And then I'm going to ask the folks at Better Career to do the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep it short since I got some time at the top. But Opine is a platform for building buyer trust. We really focus on the pre-sales team and their processes because we see SEs as the primary tip of the spear in building that buyer trust. So that's our core mission, and we help support various use cases like automating account plan creation, tracking activity, and kind of making sure that you're not having to do a bunch of data entry back into Salesforce, but also making sure SEs can reduce the cognitive burden at the individual level of like managing meeting preparation and all of the deal status and summarization that goes across all of their tools that they're typically in, like Slack and Zoom and Gong and Jira and Linear, and the list goes on, Drive and Notion, where all this customer context live, and having a clean handoff to post-sale. So being that centralized place for the technical customer context.
Awesome, thanks. And I'm going to kick us off.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, I think Opine is a great tool platform, something that when I was leading SE team, I would have loved to have had it since I had to build it custom in Salesforce. So definitely check it out if it's something that's interesting to you. For us at Better Career, again, we do career coaching for sales and pre-sales folks, mostly largely around job search, so helping folks get into that next role, whether you're in between jobs or you're looking to get into that next best job. And then also for SE leaders and sales managers, we help with hiring and recruiting for talent so we can help your team grow and help you find the right talent for your open positions. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining us. I appreciate you both making time out of your day. Maddie, thanks for stepping away from the ocean to kind of join us in our conversation. Everyone, it's been great. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our next fireside chat, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Bye.